Now, before I begin this video, I'd just like to say that everything I say is my own opinion, and that I am not attacking the actors, writers, or showrunner at all. I may be harsh in my critique, but I am not attacking them in any way. I am attacking the show. I am not that kind of YouTuber. If this was any other video, I wouldn't be saying something like this. But when I released this video earlier on Saturday, somebody in the comments came at me with personal attacks. Agree or disagree with me if you must, but if you want to disagree with me about something in the comments, at least be respectful about it. Acting like a child in the comments isn't going to do anything and make the already horrendous discord around the show worse. I personally do not give a damn about the culture war that's going on right now, but I won't ignore that is integral to the discussion about this show. But I am going to try and avoid it as best as I can. I just want to talk about this show's first episode for what it's worth and my personal view on how it is. But with that out the way, let's get started. For a long time, I haven't really cared about Star Wars that much. I used to be a super fan that wanted to watch everything and anything related to the franchise. But ever since the live-action projects kept falling on their faces, I've decided only to watch the animated projects like The Bad Batch, since that's the only time where Disney seems to care. But I have heard of one of the live-action shows that piqued my curiosity for all the wrong reasons. The Acolyte. The Acolyte was so full of discord, so full of controversy, so full of drama, that I actively tried to avoid Star Wars Acolyte, and when it came out on the first day, I simply ignored it. Well, that's until I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score. Oh my god, what the hell happened? If you don't know how severe this is the lowest score in Star Wars history. Not just for the shows, the entire history of the franchise. Of course, the actual critics are on their hands and knees for Disney again, so I decided to watch the first episode to see who was right. So strap in, dear viewers, because we are about to talk about why episode 1 of The Acolyte is a pretty big mess. So before we go in, this is your only spoiler warning. So with that out the way, let's begin. Now, when the show first began, there actually wasn't any problems with it, and credit where credit is due, it was actually pretty damn good. We get to see the show's antagonist walk into a bar and confront the Jedi she wants to kill, and when the other patrons laugh at her, she beats the hell out of them, and not only that, the choreography is actually really good. In most live-action Star Wars shows, or at least the recent ones I've watched, the characters would be stumbling around like idiots, making it feel like they are taking unnecessary hits they could have easily dodged or moved away from. But in The Acolyte, everything feels like it has a purpose. The usage of the Force wasn't too forced. Yeah, I know, I'll find my prison cell later. We get some insight into the relationship between these two, and then the Jedi pulls out her lightsaber to block the assassin's knives, and holy shit, this is where things get cool. The bartender pokes his head up and the assassin throws her knife at him, which forces the Jedi to catch it with the Force, and while she's distracted, the assassin throws a dinky little knife at the Jedi and kills her with it. I have problems with this. How the hell did this little knife kill her? She was wearing a ton of clothes over her body, so the worst it would have done was go through her lung a bit. She then goes over to kill the bartender, but she realizes that he has a kid and leaves him alone. We then cut to a ship where we're introduced to the assassin's twin sister, Osha, and we see her doing her job, and while she's out there in the middle of space doing repairs on a ship, a pressure valve explodes and begins to burn. In the middle of space. We get some hints at a tragic past before a ship flies by, and it's two Jedi who are there to arrest her, because they think that she's the assassin. They interrogate her for a little bit, and we learn that she used to be a former Jedi, and then they tell her that they think she killed the Jedi Master a day ago. She obviously responds that she didn't do such a thing because she was working on the freighter yesterday, but the bartender comes into the room and says that she did it, which prompts the Jedi to arrest her and take her back to their prison ship. And this is where I'm gonna have to stop and bitch and moan for a second. The Jedi are idiots. They didn't even verify her story, and they're only going off of one witness's statement, not any actual evidence like the knife they could have gotten fingerprints from, asking the other witnesses about what happened, or hell, even asking her coworker where she was yesterday. Hell, they even could have checked the manifest of the ship to prove that she was there, and instead of doing that, they just arrest her on flimsy charges and take her back to Coruscant. We then get to see the meditation scene from Acolyte's first trailer, and this is a great time to bring up something that I have noticed. There are no white men anywhere in the show. Now, I probably wouldn't have cared about this, but the way the show was being promoted as a diverse show, and then completely writing an entire male portion of an ethnic group out of the first episode, makes that pretty hypocritical. Oh, I'm sorry, there actually is white men in this episode, and one's depicted as a psychopath who's locked behind bars, and the other is depicted as selfish and only caring for himself. After that, Sol talks to this lady, Vernestra, and she tells him that Master Indara is dead and that his former student did it. Sol defends Osha, saying that she wouldn't do such a thing, but Vernestra says that the evidence against her is strong. No, it's not. The evidence is the equivalent of a tinfoil hat trying to hold up a brick, and thankfully for my sanity, Sol doesn't buy it. We then come back to the prison ship where Osha talks to some of the prisoners. They're planning to break out and escape, and I have to get credit to Osha here. Their plan is stupid. Yes, the ship is piloted by droids. Yes, the ship has escape pods, but you guys are in hyperspace. You can't just divert the course of the ship when you're already there, whenever you want to. All you can really do is drop out of hyperspace, which is stupid as well, as they can end up literally anywhere. And that's exactly what they do. One of the prisoners shut down the droids and dropped them out of hyperspace, which lands them in the middle of a planet's rings.
Good job.
The prisoners manage to break out and take the escape pods, leaving Osha behind as the ship hurtles towards the planet below. Osha manages to escape her cell, but her conscience gets the better of her as she saves this guy, only for him to push her off and take the final escape pod. Osha then runs to the cockpit and buckles herself in as the ship crashes onto the planet below. That crash is pretty survivable, I don't have any problems with that. We then cut to Master Sol, where he's told by the female Jedi who went to arrest Osha that he wants to be seen at the detention level. So he goes down there where the dumbest shit ever happened and manages to break my immersion of this show completely. We see the prisoners from the bottom of the ship yelling that this was all Osha's idea, which means that the Jedi, or at least the Republic, went back to the planet where they lost contact with the ship. Sol interrogating one of the survivors, and he tells him that he betrayed her and took the last escape pod. So what the show is trying to tell me is that they went back to the planet and found the escape pods, took them back to Coruscant, and didn't even send someone down to the planet to figure out what the hell happened to the ship? Even though all the prisoners were chanting earlier that she was responsible for the ship going down, and she was a known Jedi killer? This entire episode is a freaking idiot's plot, and if you think I'm insulting the writers, I'm not, but the plot itself is just a fucking mess. An idiot's plot is a plot that only works because the characters in it are so stupid that it allows the plot to go forwards, and this is exactly what is happening with the Acolyte. This had potential of being such a good show. The choreography was on point, there was more effort put into the sets and CGI than usual, and it would have proven that Star Wars isn't out of the fight just yet. But no, the characters just act so fucking stupid that your average showgoer isn't going to like it because it treats them like an idiot. Anyway, she tells Sol that they dispatched probe droids to the planet after they got back to Coruscant, and Sol decides to go to the planet to figure out if Osha survived himself, and Vernestra gives him the green light after some convincing. We then cut back to Osha, who wakes up on the ship after the crash, and after she explores around it for a couple of seconds, she finds the snow person and follows after them. We then cut back to Sol to see him recruiting Jedi to help find Osha, one of them being Yord, who was the other Jedi from the ship earlier and seems pretty close to Osha, and they depart for the snow planet. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this scene was pretty pointless. We then cut back to Osha, only to learn that the Snow Girl was the assassin from earlier, whose name is May. And the two slip into I actually don't know what this is, maybe a force vision or something, where May tells Osha that she killed Indra and she will kill everyone else with this goofy looking effect in her eyes. I know this is supposed to intimidate the main character, but I just laughed my ass off when I first saw it. And then she just wakes up back on the ship like nothing happened. We then cut back to the rescue team, where Sol tells the Jedi girl about his history with Osha, where we learned that Osha's sister started a fire in the village that killed her whole family, leaving Osha as the only survivor. And this is where the idiot's plot kicks back in again. The Jedi girl mentions that May wasn't mentioned in the file and questions if it might be her sister, only for Master Sol to shut her down. Why? Why would he do that? He believed throughout this entire episode that his former Padawan was innocent, yet the one thing that could have explained what the hell was going on is immediately shut down by the person who would have bought it the most. I wish I could have showed you footage of all of this, but I am way too scared of getting a copyright strike from Disney, and I just know it isn't worth it. They arrive at the snow planet and begin to go down there, Osha spotting the ship and heading towards it, only for the Jedi to head towards the crash site. Yord saying that nobody could have survived this crash, only for Sol to tell them to follow him after he senses something. We then cut back to Osha running away from the Jedi. Wait, why would you run away from the Jedi if you believe... You know what? Fuck it, I don't care anymore. She manages to find this little cave and ends up on a cliff with the Jedi behind her, and she almost falls off of it, but Sol manages to catch her in time with the Force and pull her back up. She tells her former master that she didn't do it, and that her sister is alive, and Sol says that he believes her and takes Osha back to the ship. For fuck's sake, didn't you shut down the Jedi girl's ideas moments before? We then cut to May on a dark beach with some robot guy talking in the background. We then see a guy standing on a rock before activating his red lightsaber, and then that's just where the episode ends. Now, to be completely honest with you guys, that was, pretty painful. Not because the show was so bad that I couldn't stop watching anymore, it just kept pissing me off at random intervals. And when the show actually started doing something cool or interesting, something stupid would happen that would ruin my mood again. And I think that's the reason why the audience score is so low, and it kind of combos into the marketing of the show as well. Let's not kid ourselves here. Acolyte's marketing was terrible. Not only were they actively riling up the fan base and pissing them off intentionally, but they also weren't marketing the shows off of its own qualities, but they were only talking about the show's inclusivity and why it was so diverse. So people were either actively going into the show with no idea what the hell it was about, or going in just to hate it. So when the show kept actively pissing them off, instead of liking the good parts, they only saw the bad parts. It's like an apple covered in bruises that either came naturally or the farmer just didn't care. No matter how good that apple is, you're gonna get pissed off that you have to eat through the bruises constantly until you just want to stop eating. But what if I told you I could fix this entire episode with one decision? What if we just didn't kill Master Indara and made it an attempted murder? Think about it. She knows who Osha is, and it would be far more plausible if it came from her mouth instead of some random bartender, and Indra pinned it on her. I know this wouldn't solve all the issues with this episode, but you could still use Indra to fix the entirety of the show's inciting incident and make it make sense. But I still know that all of this is a pipe dream to some extent. The show was set up to fail. I was one of the people laughing alongside the incoming train wreck, and now that I watched the first episode, I just feel upset and sad. This show could have been the resurgence of Star Wars, but they fucked it up majorly. This show kind of reminded me why I left the commentary I used to do behind and why I do the content I do now. All it did was make me callous. It's sad to see a franchise you love since you were 4 wither away like this. All in all, is this show's first episode as bad as Kenobi's first? No. But is the show going to be that good? Well, if the forecast from reviewers is telling me anything, we're in for a ride. And I think I'll stay on it for a little while longer, at least until it derails. I know this is somewhat different from what I usually put out, but I feel like I had to say something about this show. Star Wars has been close to my heart for years now, and even though it hasn't been doing the best, it has burned me a couple of times, I still care about this franchise that made a huge part of my childhood. You can still like this show for what it is, but I kinda just wanted to put my opinion out there. But with that out the way, I thank you for listening to me this long. Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so I can grow the channel, leave some comments down below to tell me how you feel about this and make the YouTube algorithm happy, and I will see you all in the next one.